just looking for the old Arpit in all of you. I saw all of these bright faces, all of these students. And it took me back to my school days where I used to think, hey, what do I want to do when I grow up? So a lot of you, when we are growing up, sometimes we have these dreams and we tell our parents hey, I want to be an actor, I want to be a musician, or I want to be a DJ. And so did I. So the first thing that I hear is, yeah, sure, that is a great hobby, but what are you going to do for a living? What is going to be your degree? And I'm telling you, if any one of you is going to be out with this dream of becoming an entertainer, just like your favorite actor or your musician, this is one of the most important questions that you're going to get. Which is what brings us to the topic of today, metamorphosis, and how important it is to change with time and to blend the old with the new to actually make a difference. So to start off with, I just launched an album called The Indian Road Trip, and why that is so important is because I had been making music before that for 10 to 12 years, and good music for about 7 years. It takes a lot of practice, but either ways. So with time, what I realized is, why wasn't I able to stand out? There are about 120,000 tracks that are released every day. Imagine 120,000 tracks. So if I take the average to be 3 minutes per track, this comes down to be 6,000 hours of listening, or roughly 250 days. So in just one day, the music that is released, if you play it back to back, you will have to listen to it for 250 days to just listen to 1 day worth of releases. So what makes you stand out is the way when you start thinking different. So that's where Indian Road Trip and the inspiration to travel comes in. So I have always loved traveling. My mom is also a great fan of that, so I've been introduced to traveling at a very young age. So I love connecting with nature, connecting with sounds, but the traditional folk music that maybe at your age I would have thought, hey, that's a boring tabla. Oh yeah, this guy's playing the boring classical music. Maybe at that age it felt like that. But now, when I look at it from the point of view when it was introduced back in the days when our folk music was being evolved. So how important it was to evolve that music so that all of you can enjoy it, just like an Avicii track, just like a track by David Guetta. So to make that happen, we need to fuse that with the sounds of today. And that is exactly what I did in my album. And all the inspiration comes from traveling. Because I'm born and brought up in Chandigarh, and there's only a limited culture in every part of India, but when you combine that, our country is so rich in heritage. You will learn something new in every corner. Just like today, I landed here, and this landscape, I immediately called my mom. I said, Mom, these kids are living in heaven. What is this place? This is gorgeous. And I'm just a tiny bit jealous. It's just fantastic being here. My school wasn't like that. So just this inspiration that you get when you travel is what I tried infusing into music, is what I tried blending into the album, and I presented that to the world to stand out. And our album hit the #1 chart in India in all genres. So we were actually #1. I'm an independent artist. I don't have any backing by any big companies or anything like that. It was all something that came from within me. It was all just a passion. It took me a lot of times to fail. I failed so many times. I put out so many tracks. But then slowly I started cracking the code, of standing out, of just being different. And that's where I started traveling and capturing local vibes. When I went to Rajasthan, there was this beautiful landscape. There was these dunes that I saw, and Jaisalmer, right across it. We were just going on a road trip, and there's this friend of mine who took me to this old heritage fort where people were playing sarangis, and there was this traditional dance. I was so fascinated, but in that moment, of course, I couldn't record it, but my mind did. So I came back, I went online, I started looking for the best sarangi players, and I was like, okay, let me record something traditional and try to make that my own in this new age. How would I deliver it to the kids of today? How would I like to listen to it? And that's exactly what I did. So captured the local vibe a little bit, the local dialect. I try to understand what the people think like. I try to understand what appeals to everybody in a given place. For example, a traditional Punjabi breakfast would be chole bhature. not to stereotype, but yeah, well, I'm Punjabi and that's my favorite breakfast too. But then coming here, the breakfast is totally different. Absolutely delicious, by the way. So just seeing all of this difference and owning it up and letting it be a part of your soul, absorbing all of it from all around you and making it a part of your project when you're delivering, that is the right way to actually take it forward. So tradition with modernity, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Like how we see all of these beautiful synthesizers, these analog machines. You look at A.R. Rahman's studio on his Instagram or any place, and you're like, wow, that looks very complicated. What is that machinery? So all of those new age synthesizers, those are the sounds of today. That's where you make it. Electronic music, so to call it. When that is blended with tradition, with the traditional mridangas, with the traditional flutes, that is where the difference stands out. So basically, folk and classical music has a very different approach. And why that made things easier for me is because my mind thought differently. And when I sat down with a few musicians and I asked them about their roots, they were like, okay, this is how we approach it. This is the style of melodies. And I was like, okay, my approach is different. When you sit down, you combine both of them. What does that sound like? That is where my album comes out, actually, that Indian Road Trip. And that is where the old school meets the new age. And that is where the cool music was born, like so-called for me. Actually, I personally expected nothing from it. But seeing all the love flowing in from around the world for the album, and it just felt very special. So with that being said, there are so many challenges in the creative process. Like, we have different names for the same thing. I would call something by a different name, whereas if I talk to a classically trained musician from Amsterdam, he would refer to the same thing in a different way. So just finding that overlap in what we mean when we are trying to express ourselves with music, that, and also getting the people who still have those old roots with a new age mentality into the studio, people having that trust in the new age music, that is what is more important. So with a show of hands, does anybody have any favorite DJs over here? Any favorite musicians? Does anybody listen to electronic music? All of your young kids, show of hands, electronic music? Wow, fantastic. So I think the audience knows what I'm talking about. So all of our favorite DJs and everybody that comes in, it is so important to be actually musically accurate. It is so important to be well versed with the technicalities of it. It sounds like a very interesting and a very, like, hey, I want to do that kind of a job. But if I tell you what I've done in the last 24 hours, it is already very challenging to mix these two things. I had a show in Bangalore just a day before, and setting that entire show up with my hardworking team over here and pulling that show off, and that show was a sold-out show. After that, we haven't slept. We just traveled, came here, but still absorbed all the culture, looking at all the beautiful places, looking at the nature, looking at the beautiful places where we are. So it is not easy. It is still a complex job, but what makes it easy is having the will to actually absorb in more stuff. And that's where the evolution actually begins. So the music actually doesn't really come from the people. It doesn't come from the people who are playing the instrument. It comes from the heart, because you can hand me an instrument, I will play it differently. I could hand an instrument to anybody over here, everybody would have a different take on it. All of us would have a different favorite track. That is where, if we find the common grounds for actually where the overlap comes in, that is our key to success. So the role of technology in the music creation, that's where this steps in. You must have seen, hey, now everybody and anybody and everybody is becoming a singer, and you must have seen a lot of criticism around auto-tune, right? Of course, you guys see Instagram, and like that was making the rounds. Like the people are like, hey, this guy's an auto-tune singer, this guy's that. So that is where the technology comes in. Yes, of course, you don't need to be as accurate, because it's just like driving a car. Most of the people nowadays would not know how to drive a manual car, but whereas the roots of driving a car come from there. So the role of technology makes the music creation so easy. I don't even need to have a sitar player sitting with me to actually make a sitar melody right off my laptop. I do not need a big studio anymore. I can actually do all of that in my laptop. Just to be clear. I mean, all those big studios are just fancy places, and all the music can be done with the help of technology within a laptop itself. So since it's that easy, so it's very advisable to be traveling to explore your roots, since I'm talking about how do you absorb the music from around the world. So to be traveling with that small piece of technology that can help you make the next big track, or like, you know, make the local music into your own. So that is where it comes in. But we cannot be plain, upright, disrespectful towards the root of the things. For example, if I'm sampling some folk music, I have some responsibility towards keeping the soul and keeping the respect of the music that once held. Of course, it's evolved. So that is where the responsibility comes in. Knowing the real emotion behind the original thing is it's just so essential, I cannot emphasize enough. And also connecting with the youth. That is why I had to ask you guys that question. This is a picture from my last Sunburn show when I played with Alan Walker in Delhi. And it's just the new generations that is coming in. All of you are so open to music. Everybody is just so open to absorbing the new kind of things. Like I remember while growing up, my parents would listen to some, like everybody has some old school music that's their favorite. But eventually people start getting more comfortable. People start absorbing more. And now, in fact, even my parents listen to electronic music. So connecting with the youth is absolutely the key, and everything else follows. And from here on, I guess Indian road trip was just the first stop in the journey. The next one could be a road trip somewhere else. God knows, I've been thinking about going to Middle East and doing some sampling over there, just connecting more cultures, infusing more cultures into our own, just seeing what if another cultural thing blended with our own folk thing and mixed with my electronica flair. How does that sound? And where does that take me? But, well, that's it for today for me. Cheers. Thank you.